welcome back for another episode of the show. I still have a name. I don't know, Julia's get off the couch and go cook something and sometimes travel show. I don't know. But let's get going. So I have this favorite cookie recipe, and it's actually monster cookies. But you know, one time, okay, this is the worst story. So, do I tell this story? I don't know if I tell this story. Long story short, I spent 10 weeks in the hospital on bed rest. One of the most heartbreaking times in our life, right? And we had a nurse named Dana that had been taking care of us. And when she heard the news that the baby hadn't survived and she was coming to work, she decided to bake a batch of cookies for us. And she just made up the recipe, and they were so delicious. Like, we were in the midst of the most heart-wrenching grief that I can imagine. But her cookies were so good that we'd be crying, and all of a sudden we'd go, I could have one of those cookies, and we'd start laughing about it. And so, when I asked her for the recipe, that's when I found out she had just made up the recipe because she made the cookies out of things that she had around the house. She didn't really have everything she needed to make a full batch of cookies, and so she kind of had a little of this, a little of that in there. Well, fast forward several years later, and I wanted to make monster cookies, but I didn't have enough oatmeal, and so I found this recipe, and when I made the recipe, I tell you, it tastes just like those cookies. So, these are really good cookies. Everything we're going to need. We're going to need flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, salt, butter, and it does need to be room temperature butter, creamy peanut butter. I have made it with chunky, and it works just as well because it just adds little crunchy bits to it. Brown sugar, vanilla extract. The recipe calls for a 12-ounce package of M&Ms. But I've discovered if you do half M&Ms and half chocolate chips, or I've got actually these Belgian like chunks, and you can also just make it with chocolate chips. But I kind of like mixing the candy instead of just having all M&Ms. So but a lot of chocolate. Put a lot of chocolate in. I've actually used even peanut M&Ms before, and that's really good too. 2 eggs. Oh, I don't have the eggs out yet. And if you make a cookie recipe, this is pretty much the same thing for all cookie recipes. Is you need to cream together. You start with your sugars and your butter, and you cream those together. In this recipe, we're going to cream together the peanut butter too. So butter, peanut butter. That's why you have to have this be room temperature, because you need to cream it together. So butter, peanut butter, and then the sugars get creamed together. Then you add your eggs and cream those together. Then in a separate bowl, you mix together all your dry ingredients. And then you add those in slowly to your wet ingredients. So let's get started baking some delicious cookies. Okay, let's get started. We need 1 3/4 cup of flour. 1 cup. And I don't have a 3/4 cup measuring spoon, so I'm going to use 3 1/4 cup. Okay, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And all these ingredients, if you don't know this already, you should make sure you've got your spoonful and then level off the top. Now the flour, I was doing it against the bag. I didn't really show that to you. So there's the baking powder, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then 2 cups of the quick oats, or also rolled oats, is what they're also called. Okay, now I'm going to double check that I got everything in there. flour, baking, yep. Okay, now I'm just gonna mix all that together, make sure it's nice and mixed up. That looks like that. All right, so now let's start creaming our butter. Okay, so it is 1 cup of butter, softened to butter, room temperature butter. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this on a low speed, get the butter started. Add to that 1 cup of white sugar. And 1 cup of packed brown sugar. Which basically means when I put it into my measuring cup, I'm going to pack it down. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and still level, because you don't want to put too much in. Now I'm going to take my petals out just a little bit. Put my peanut butter in. 1 cup of peanut butter. I'm going to go in. Sticky stuff. I'm going to go ahead and scrape down my bowl a little bit. And we're going to turn this up to high speed. And really cream that together. Alright, now we're going to add the eggs. And it calls for 2 eggs. And one thing I recommend doing is putting the eggs in a separate bowl before you're adding them into here, because especially with, I used to just crack them and put them right in, and which is fine, except that now that I have Parkinson's, sometimes I kind of smash my eggs and I end up with eggshells in there. So I want to know that I can fish out eggshells here versus getting them lost in my batter. So crack the egg. I got pretty good control today, so I'm just going to crack it like usual. Put that egg in. And since that turned out okay, I'm going to go ahead and slide it in to my batter. And crack the other egg. And lucky me, turned out fine today. Add that in. I'm going to turn it back up on the high speed and cream that together. Alright, now before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and scrape down my sides in my bowl. This is something else that's hard to do because my right hand's not great at it anymore and I'm right-handed. My left hand's getting better. It's like I have 2 left hands sometimes. Okay, turn this back up on high. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to have it on low speed. And I'm going to add in my vanilla extract, which is 1 teaspoon. I've got it on low. And I'm going to start adding in slowly the flour. So it's all gone. Okay, just about got it all in there now. And then just dump in the rest. Looks like it's time for another scrape down. Put it on low. And then usually they recommend that you put your chocolate chips and stuff in by holding it in by hand, but I just cheat and use the machine. I don't really feel like I'm that strong, but it is crushing them. We're going to stop this. So that, I put in the chocolate chunks. I'm going to put in half bag of these M&Ms. If I can get it open. Okay, I got it. And this way I can make more cookies later. And then I'm just gonna basically give this a few turns because I don't want it to crush up all the M&Ms too bad, but it'll mix it up pretty good. Okay, that's far enough. And the rest I can do by hand as I'm portioning them out. It's almost cookie time! Oh, hi. I forgot I got the camera on. Okay, so now it's time to put the cookies on the pan. So I always like using parchment paper because then my cookie sheet stays clean. Okay, so now get that there and try to hold it down. But I always like, if you try to roll it up this way, it just kind of comes and rolls back. So put your paper on upside down, like this. And then my favorite method, oh, I forgot to tell you, I turned the oven on. It's been preheating at 350. But I just like to take 2 large spoons and I dish out a good hunk of dough. I don't know. I suppose it's bigger than a golf ball, but smaller than a baseball. Depends on how big you want your cookie. And you leave room on the sheet for them to spread out. You're not going to spread out too far. It gives room in between. And if you have chocolate fall off like this, you can either eat it or just stick it in your cookie. That one's really big. It takes some back. But you can use an ice cream scooper to do this with, and they'll be a little bit more uniform in size. But this method works too, and they'll still be round. They'll just be a little, they won't all be exactly the same size. Now, you bake these for 12 minutes, but usually I just bake 1 pan and then stick the rest of these back in the fridge so that we have fresh baked cookies from time to time. I guess the week goes on, I'll bake fresh cookies and they don't get stale. So after the dough's been refrigerated, then I will cook them. You have to cook them for a little longer. I just come check on them. So let me see if we're up to temperature yet. We're not, so gotta wait for the temperature to come up because I forgot to turn the oven on. We'll put these in. Okay, cookies are ready. They're actually not. Put them in for a little longer. That didn't work out very good. Don't cry over spilled milk.